Hi y'all, it's Curious Raven again with Raven Investigates. We are going to cover the story of Kara Robinson, who survived a kidnapping attack. This woman is so brave, and I'm hoping that the things that she did will help someone else if they're ever in this horrible situation. I hope y'all had a good week. This happened in 2002, June 24th. Richard Evanettes kidnapped 15-year-old Kara Robinson from her friend's front yard in South Carolina. She was at a friend's house, and her friend, it was the weekend, and she was spending the night, and her friend's mom left. You know, they have always been responsible, and her mom felt that they had some freedom to roam around. You know, it was 2002. It was more safe. That's all I have to say. The girls woke up and they decided they wanted to go to the lake, go swimming. Well, Heather is Kara's friend that she was staying with. She said, look, you can't go anywhere until you go outside and water the plants for me before you leave. Well, Kara said that her friend Heather needed to get in the shower. So she offered, hey, I'll go outside and water the plants while you get in the shower. You know, kill two birds with one stone. Kara said that she noticed a car. It drove past her, and then she said she noticed that it was going out of the neighborhood, but then, very quickly, she said that the car started coming back. It pulled into the driveway where she was actually outside watering plants by herself, and the guy got out, and he was wearing a button-down t-shirt. You know, it was tucked in. He looked very nicely dressed. And she said that she felt safe. She didn't feel like nothing was weird. She even said that he was handsome. He came over to her and said, I have some magazines and I saw you outside and I just wanted to give these to you. Is your mom or dad home? And unfortunately, Kara said no. This is not my house. This is my friend Heather's house. And then he said, well, what about her mom? And unfortunately, Kara said no, she's not home. Guy knows that both the girls are there by themselves. And I feel like that was a big mistake on her behalf, but a lot of people want to tell the truth. And if someone asks you a question, it's just a kind of a reaction to say the truth. You know, these days we're really into stranger danger. My kids know what to look for and not to do, and back then we didn't. 2002, you know, I was in, I think, the 9th grade. And yeah, I knew when someone freaked me out, but I didn't. It wasn't like hammered into my head, stranger danger like it is these days. So I know she's a smart girl because this story gets crazy. Kara said that he was like, well, I can just give them to you and you give them to her mom. And then, you know, Kara was like, okay, I'll take them inside. So she took the magazines. She said the man moved closer. And then that's when Kara felt like spidey senses, you know, like something was wrong. She said he kind of entered my personal space, and that was like, okay, this feels a little awkward. But then again, he is handing me something, and he came to hand me the brochures with his left hand. But then, with his right hand, he pulled out a handgun and put it to the side of my neck. Then he directed Kara to his car. Kara said that she felt like there was no question that she had to do what he said because he had a gun. And her only thoughts were prayers to God that she gets away from this man. Unfortunately, Kara was put into a Rubbermaid container in the back of his car. Could you imagine being stuck in a Rubbermaid container? Kara said that when she was in the container, she was trying to remember every stop, every turn, so she could kind of tell people where she was. She was trying to take note of these things. She stated, I was pretty familiar with the area, and so I tried to pay attention to where he was going. That way I would know where I was, and I felt him get on the interstate. He drove maybe 10 to 15 minutes before he stopped, and when he stopped, he opened the container, and I could see that he pulled over off on the side of the road, where maybe there were some trees or something, and that was like the first time he spoke to me. He said, I'm going to tie you up and I'm going to gag you. And then he reminded her that he had a gun. She said that he was acting very, very calm and that she needed to go along with what he said. She said she needed him to believe that I wasn't going to try anything, so I just went along with him. He restrained my wrist and my ankles and then gagged me. And then he actually put the lid all the way on at that point. And then he drove for a couple more minutes. And then he parked. He said, I'm going to get out of the car and I'm going to take you out. And I don't want you to scream. So he got out of the car for a second and I could hear, like outside noises, people moving around. And for some reason my brain went to gas station. I thought for some reason he was going to rob a gas station. But then he came back. And that was when he actually carried the container over to and set it down and then drug it. And at that point, I could tell that he drug it over concrete, like the texture. And I could feel him drag over a threshold. And then the sound changed. And then I heard him shut a door. By now, you already know this man kidnapped her and actually brought her into some type of house. She said that when they got in there, that it was a couple more minutes. And then he opened the container and he told her, I'm going to take the gag out, I'm going to take the restraints off, but remember that I am the one with the gun. You can't scream and don't try to escape. They were in his apartment, and although Kara didn't know where she was, she had a plan to gather information on her captor. She wanted to not get away and then not know who this guy was. She wanted him to be caught. She said that she was trying to read his mail. I was looking at the magnets on his refrigerator and I knew who his doctor was. I knew who his dentist was, and I knew the serial number from the inside of the Rubbermaid container because I knew that I was going to escape. I wanted to learn about him, so I did try to have some conversation with him. He had some lizards and some fish. I asked him about those. I got him on the topic of he was in the military and found out he was discharged from the Navy. And she said that he engaged in conversation with her. He was cordial to me. That sounds so crazy, but he was polite. Supposedly he asked her a bunch of questions. And he was writing down the answers. My name, and whose house I was at, and if I had any previous sexual experience, if I had a boyfriend, and wrote it all down. Kara knew that she would probably end up being sexually assaulted because in her mind she knew people don't kidnap young girls just to kidnap them. So she was preparing herself to know that it was going to happen, to accept it. And unfortunately it happened. With a gun and a knife at this man's reach, Kara said that he repeatedly raped her over and over again for hours. Kara stated that she definitely placed a high value on her survival. At one point he said, we're going to watch the news, and we're going to see if you're on the news. Let's see if anyone misses you. And I had been kidnapped 8 hours earlier, so of course I wasn't on the news at that point. And he was like, well, nobody misses you. You know, continually he told me that he was going to let me go, and he said, and then it's your choice what you do. He said, you can go to the police, and you can always be the girl who was raped. And so it always stuck in my mind that there was going to be the stigma attached to me. From then on, I was going to be the girl who was kidnapped, the girl who was raped. To me, this is disgusting. This man was trying to get into her head, make her feel less worthy of who she is, made her kind of scared to tell people. I think he was trying to groom her into not telling anybody. He thought maybe her pride was more important than him getting caught. But you know what? Stay tuned. This man is wrong. Through all of it, Kara stayed strong, and her strength was challenged when he put her back in the container. Kara said there was one point that she definitely lost it and had a panic attack. He told her he had to go make a phone call, and at that point, he put me back into the container, and he said, you've been good so far. Basically, if you promise that you're not going to scream, I won't gag you or anything. He put her in the container, and at that point, the lid was mostly on. But I started to basically hyperventilate and have a panic attack. He came back in there and said, what's the problem? And I told him, I can't breathe. Then he said, okay, well, I'll leave the lid open as long as you don't make any noise. And he did. Then we went back and continued his phone call. I must say, this man had probably felt so powerful at that moment that he just felt that she wouldn't scream or wouldn't do anything. He figured she was terrified, and he felt a lot of power over her. At this point, he got done with his phone call, and she stated he put handcuffs on her wrist and had a rope coming up from the bed frame. And on the end of the ropes, there was one of those C-clamps. And so that was attached to the headboard, to my handcuffs. So the hands were kind of above my head, and the restraints were on my right leg, which was attached to the bottom of the bed. And then he was just like, okay, we're going to go to sleep. And in the same bed, he was right next to me. He fell asleep. Then in the early morning hours, Kara said that she saw the moment that she needed to run. She had to escape. It was her chance to escape. She stated, I woke up the next morning, he was still asleep, and I knew that was it. That was the time. At the most feasible time, she ran for it. But in order to leave without waking the sleeping monster, she stated she couldn't make a sound or much movement. Kara said that her hands were kind of above her head, and the first thing that she did was try to reach my hand to unscrew the C-clasps, and she couldn't quite do it. There was just enough room that she could kind of get it to her mouth, and she used her teeth to unscrew it. She still had her hands in the handcuffs, and then she was able to kind of slowly wiggle down, and then she kind of slid out of bed without waking him. So by this point, she's out of the bed. She stated she got her clothes back on and went into the living room, went to the door, and right beside the door, there was a coat closet, and it had one of those accordion-style doors on it, and it was metal. It's kind of a noisy door. And there was stuff like the vacuum cleaner and Rubbermaid container was also right there in the little foyer area. So she moved the container and she pushed the vacuum in and unlocked the door. She also stated that she knew that when she did this, it was going to make noise, especially when she closed the door. So basically in one motion, she closed the door and opened the other one, and his bedroom window looked out into the front door basically. So I just knew he was going to wake up when he heard that, and I knew he was going to be able to see me. So I just knew as fast as she could, and she ran, said Kara. She ran. In her bare feet, Kara ran for her life. I just thought for some reason he was going to wake up and he was going to shoot me through the window. But she was out. Kara ran, scanning the parking lot for anyone who could help. Then she spotted a car. I ran out in front of the car and waved my arms and stopped them. And to the driver, I said I was kidnapped. I just came from that apartment, and I turned and pointed to it. It was a guy in that apartment right there, so remember it. They were, of course, very shocked. You know, because they saw a young girl with handcuffs dangling from her hand, clearly upset. It was a man. They drove her to the Richland County Sheriff's Station. But the reaction she gets is not the one that she suspects. Kara stated, the deputy that was there, I felt he did not believe anything that I was saying. And I was like, I still have handcuffs on one of my wrists, said Kara. And I just felt like he didn't believe me. It was definitely pretty infuriating because I was like, here I am. Like, I've actually done what I set out to do. Like, I escaped and now I'm in an area that should be a safe zone, and now I'm being treated like I'm lying about this. The deputy called Kara Robinson's mom. Her missing daughter has been found. The most emotional part was whenever they called her. They said, we have your daughter, and I could hear her over the phone. I could hear her say, Kara? You have Kara? And that was the most emotional moments for me. Before deputies took Kara to a hospital, they took her back to where her 18-hour horror had taken place. Kara said the investigator said, we were going to put you in the car real quick and we're going to head over to the apartments and we're going to see if we can find this guy. And I said, you know, the guys that brought me in, I showed them what apartment. And of course, they were in shock. So we went back to the apartment complex. We were trying to identify it. And I was like, I'm not going to remember because I crammed so much information in my brain at this point. Remember, Kara memorized all that she could about her kidnapper. So her brain was kind of in overload. Kara stated, I knew that there was a woman living here. I knew that she had red hair, 'cause I saw the long red hair in the hairbrush, said Kara. So whenever we're able to go back to the apartment complex, I wasn't able to point out the specific one. There was a property manager riding around on a golf cart. And so the investigator stopped him and said, this is information that we have. Do you know what apartment it is? The apartment manager was like, yep, I know exactly what apartment that is.
After Kara Robinson described her kidnapper's physical appearance and the red hair she saw in a brush, the apartment manager led investigators right to the monster's front door. It was his apartment that he shared with his wife, said Deputy Chief Stan Smith. But by the time the cops had arrived, the man was gone. He had woken up and realized that he had to get out of there, said Smith. But the clues Kara's abductor left behind were quite abundant and vital. Investigators learned his identity, Richard Mark Evanettes. We began to gather information about where he worked, got some telephone records, different cars that he had access to, said Smith. Then, in a metal footlocker, investigators found a clue to a potentially even more sinister past. One of the things in that footlocker was a newspaper from Spotsylvania, Virginia, and the headline was that these two sisters' bodies had been located in a river there. That was pretty telling, based on the circumstances involving Kara, him having that newspaper, said Smith. Had Evanettes done this before? Deputies called in the FBI. A manhunt was launched and the clock was ticking down. Investigators tracked down Evanettes' family. It turned out his wife and his mother were both on vacation, unaware of what had been going on back at home. The incident with Kara, he chose that particular time because his wife and his mother had left to go to Disney World, quoted Deputy Chief Smith. Shell-shocked, the family agreed to meet with authorities. During that meeting, a sister wanted to speak to the detectives privately, and she was able to give us significant information about where Evanettes was, said Smith. He had reached out to her. She indicated he was in a motel about 30 to 40 minutes away. So, we immediately dispatched a team. I went to the location myself, and we ultimately hit the room, and he was gone. Again, said Smith. Had Evanettes been tipped off? We basically had a serial killer on the loose. At this point in time, we had a dangerous individual. We believed he was armed, and I received word that his phone was in the Jacksonville, Florida area, so we knew he was heading south, said Smith. Cops spotted him, and then a high-speed chase ensued. We received word that he had been stopped in Sarasota, Florida, said Smith. Evanettes pulled a gun. He did not comply with police commands. A K-9 was sent to the car, said Smith. Evanettes put the gun in his mouth and then pulled the trigger. When Kara Robinson heard that her kidnapper and rapist had committed suicide, clearly there was anger. I was just kind of mad that he sort of got the easy way out, said Kara. And surprisingly, there was a tinge of disappointment. I remember just hoping that they could catch up with him because I wanted to have my day in court across from him, Kara said. I wanted him to look at me across the courtroom and know that choosing me was his biggest mistake. Well, it was case closed as far as Kara's case. However, based on the find in the footlocker and starting to piece together Mr. Evanettes' background, this investigation was not done yet at all, said Deputy Chief Smith. We were able to forensically link Evanettes to the disappearance and murder of two sisters in Spotsylvania. This was the unsolved case of 15-year-old Kristen Lisk and 12-year-old Katie Lisk, who were abducted from their front lawn and eventually murdered by Richard Evanettes. And shockingly, the cops were also able to link Evanettes to yet another cold case in that same county, the abduction and murder of 16-year-old Sophia Silva. We don't have too many serial killers, serial rapists that come onto our radar. That's what Evanettes was, said Smith. Reportedly, fibers from Evanettes' fuzzy handcuffs used on Kara Robinson were also found on the other 3 girls. To further link him to the other crimes, and unbelievably, Kristen Lisk's palm print and fingerprints were found on the inside of Evanettes' apartment. I was not even remotely surprised. He was so calm, and he was so calculated, and so prepared that there was no sense of surprise that he had done this before, says Kara. When asked, having learned about the other girls he kidnapped and murdered, do you feel confident that had Kara not escaped and essentially saved herself, that she too would have been murdered? Deputy Chief Smith said there was no doubt in his mind. Kara Robinson had been through hell, and it was time for the healing to begin. There was one person in particular who would play an instrumental role in that recovery. Richland County Sheriff Leon Lott. Shortly after her kidnapping, I met with her family and her in my office, said Sheriff Lott. She was a survivor, and she was a fighter, and she was a warrior, and she wasn't going to be a victim. He sort of immediately took me under his wing and treated me like a family member, says Kara. I've got daughters myself, said Sheriff Lott. I kind of adopted her as one of my daughters too, and wanted to make sure that she continued to be that survivor. So we bonded. So, when Kara was out looking for a summer job, Sheriff Lott had an idea. He recruited Kara to come work at the sheriff's department. She started doing administrative work for a couple of years and continued to do so through college. In college, Kara was studying to become a teacher, but she did love working at the sheriff's department. So she decided to combine her 2 passions and became a school resource officer. She decided to merge that gap and blend in the best of both worlds, education and protection. While a cadet at the police academy, Kara had managed to keep her story close to the vest. That is, until the day that her cover was blown. I was actually in class at the academy, and the instructor started teaching on my case, said Kara. One of the first slides was a picture of Kristen and Katie Lisk and Sophia Silva, and I saw it and just went, oh no. Thus, at the end of the class, she went up to her and said, I just want you to know that Kara is me. She says the instructor's face turned blood red, and she just said that she was sorry. And Kara said at that point, she then told other people in the academy leadership. They came to her and they went, we want to nominate you for an award at the academy. She was then given the award for courage and bravery at the academy for her graduation. Today, Kara Robinson is married. She's taken some time off from the sheriff's department to raise her 2 small boys. She says that she made the decision the moment she was abducted, and from that point on, that she would never be a victim. She is truly a survivor. In her words, I think that to say you're a victim means that someone took something from you. Nothing was taken from me. I refuse to give that man that power. The question is, has it changed who she is? To that she responds, I will say that I am who I am because of what happened to me, but it did not make me who I am. I am who I am because of what happened to me, sure, but it does not define who I am by any means. One final note about the footlocker that deputies found at the home of Richard Evanettes. Investigators say that along with the newspaper headlines about the abductions, they also found detailed notes that he wrote to himself while carefully planning out these abductions, as well as the pressed white button-down shirt that he wore during his attacks. His wife told deputies that she had always wondered what was inside the footlocker, but her husband Richard had forbade her from ever opening it up.
Alright, recap. On June 24th, 2002, Richard Evanettes kidnapped 15-year-old Kara Robinson from a yard in South Carolina. He took her to his home before raping her repeatedly, then tied her to the bed before falling asleep, allowing her the opportunity to escape and alert authorities. Meanwhile, discovering her escape, Evanettes fled to Florida. He was tracked to Florida on June 27th and was involved in a high-speed chase by the Sarasota police.
Richard Mark Evanettes was born on July 29th, 1963, in Columbia, South Carolina. Evanettes was in the Navy and was married twice to much younger wives, with both living unaware of his crimes. In 1987, he ran into trouble with the law when he exposed himself to a 15-year-old girl, and he was arrested only 1 month later, when his ship returned to port. Evanettes was then sentenced to 3 years of probation for his offense. On September 9th, 1996, Evanettes kidnapped 16-year-old Sophia Silva from the front step of her house in Virginia. Police found her body in a pond only weeks later. On May 1st, 1997, Evanettes went on to kidnap 15 and 12-year-old Kristen and Katie Lisk, respectively, from their homes, also in Virginia. Both bodies were found a mere 5 days later in a river.
This guy is a piece of shit. I'm hoping that people will remember this. So if for some weird reason something happens to you in some sort of way, remember your information. So when you do get help, you can get the person that hurt you into jail. And sometimes remembering stuff too will help you escape and know where to go. I feel very sad that Kara went through that. I could not even imagine. I'm sorry about my voice, y'all. It's very cracky and I've been having a lot of mucus and stuff, so I'm very sorry. I hope y'all enjoyed this story by myself and Raven Investigates. Soon he will be getting his channel back up and it's called Raven Investigates and you can go check him out. He is an amazing storyteller and his investigation videos are awesome. So I recommend y'all go check that out. And I will put all of his links down below. I wanted this video to be a little lighthearted compared to murder. Makes me very happy that this woman escaped. I'm very proud that she actually became a police officer and wanted to do the job of putting these monsters behind bars. And she really makes a difference in the world. I hope y'all have a really amazing weekend, and I will see y'all Monday. Until then, remember, it's scary out there.